How's it going, guys? Monster Hunter alumni, Monster Hunter vet, Brother Virtue. Just wanted to take a moment and discuss what was just announced today at the Game Award show, which is Monster Hunter Wilds. Obviously, there is a bunch of reaction videos on the internet right now, but I don't really think anybody's comprehensively breaking things down, speculating, or giving an opinion. So I wanted to take a moment and talk about that. Hey, me on cam if you can see it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the video in loop in the background. I apologize for the quality of the video. I am not typically a YouTuber. I do stream on Twitch sometimes. Not too keen on selling myself. However, I am very passionate about Monster Hunter, and I enjoy these moments where new games are launched and we get to discuss them and kind of speculate as a community together on our ideas. I did happen to write down a comprehensive amount of notes on this video. And of course we got Monster Hunter jazz playing in the background. Hopefully it's not too loud. I'll try to listen back on this. And I don't know if maybe I'm going to do more of these in the future. I'll also be talking about this information that I'm breaking down in the near future on a podcast that I've been doing with another Monster Hunter creator named Fumetto, who's a speedrunner and plays a bunch of Monster Hunter, is a gunner, and does some other stuff. So that's me plugging somebody else. So first off, the video quality, in my opinion, is not necessarily what I was thinking or hoping it was going to be, but still I think there's a lot there. In the initial title screen, we are seeing Monster Hunter in the same font or stylings of Monster Hunter World, at least that part. I did happen to take notice of the logo and how that is constructed, and it's usually telling a little bit of a story as well in these Monster Hunter titles. I have been, in fact, been playing the series for almost the full duration of time that it's been available in the West, and also some imported games in the East. So I wanted to talk about themes. Right off the bat, we see the logo, which I just mentioned. It's made up of two vertical helix dragons. It's kind of making an infinity symbol. The common theme, I think, with this visual art style was familiar in Monster Hunter DOS. You saw that with the day and night cycle, so I think that we're going to be seeing a day and night cycle return. This was also something that was fairly common in World. Gave us a different variance of monsters and or habitation to those monsters. Usually there was also a loading screen in the portable series that had the same art style of dragons as well in the logo. Whether that means anything, whether that means like returning monsters, I couldn't necessarily say. I also noticed that there's some symbols within this logo, and those symbols in the past have been representative of elements, or at least that's what we've speculated. You can see it there again on the screen. Two helix dragons, one down, one up. Obviously the one that's going up has some rods in the lower half of the body. You also see rods throughout the entirety of the map. In this view, you can see different biomes as well. I think that's pretty interesting. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. Off to the left, we have like kind of a lush savanna, which, I mean, not necessarily a traditional forest. In the middle, we have some grasslands. Off to the right, we have a desert biome. There's a formation here in the back that I feel is kind of familiar, indicative of the Ishvala or the Gaiascorm fights in the past. It looks like there's a bunch of canyons and ravines in here, possibly a secret zone or oasis-esque like zone. And off in the top left, you can see that we have a ice cap. So I believe that we are at least seeing several different biomes represented. Obviously, we don't see a volcano zone. I think with World, there was a crystal volcanic area. I would say that if you are looking at the, I guess, breaking down the logo again, let's see what we've got here. So there is a ripple effect or visual ripple. So we see wilds come in, and then we kind of have like this from left to right ping that creates ripples. I feel like that's like reflections. Also in our logo itself, we have facing up and down. These four smaller circles are made up of dragons, each with their own kind of interesting features. Maybe I'm overreading, but the nose is different than some of the teeth here. I think in the past that kind of expressed the possibility of elders or maybe dragons of importance. As above as there is below, there's possibly a underground biome that we could maybe see volcanic activity, crystal biomes, maybe an underwater, or not necessarily underwater, but maybe an underground water reserve of some sort, an ocean, so to speak. I also noticed that there's a heavy emphasis on the dirt and the brown and the desert here. I would think it would be interesting if this was a like sister city to Lochlac, which was in Tri. Rise was in some many ways an homage to the series of Tri, with some of the maps being flushed out. I think that going forward, it would be interesting if they follow a pattern of maybe an homage to the 4th generation. Obviously, I'm not seeing any familiar landmarks that are indicative or incite that feeling. That's more of just a personal preference or thought process that for you could inspire some aspects of this game. I do recall that Gore Magala being fought was in kind of a more dirt laden or autumn season like grasslands. That initial map itself in 4U or 4. Let's go ahead and keep breaking things down. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this back up. I think that these lightning rods are in fact man-made, Wyverian-made in nature. They don't look like something that's a natural formation. Also, with those items being present on the logo, I think maybe there's underground worms or giant dragons, old elders. I think one of those actually had legs and the other one didn't, so maybe we could see a return of giant serpent elders. I think that would be kind of cool. I think that also would be in line with the thinking of a 4th homage, so we're going to get maybe back Dalamadur or something of that sort. I think that's it as far as themes go. I think that if those are man-made or Wyverian-made, then we're getting back into that ancient culture of the lore that hasn't really been pursued too much in the series, and it would be nice to see more elements like that flushed out. I know that they tried to do that with the Monster Hunter movie, which is forgettable and not necessarily something that I want to go too far into. What we're seeing in the footage itself, I think my next topic is dynamic weather. This could be limited to zones. I think that because you can see different biomes, dynamic weather could either be something that passes through a biome, maybe something that encircles the entire map. I think depending on the biome that you're in, obviously you got lightning rods, so that, maybe it's a dust storm in the desert, and it could be, heavy rain or like a deluge in the more forested areas. Maybe it's a violent snowstorm of some sort. It would also be interesting to see an idea captured within the series that would be like new and innovative, like maybe like seasons, but I think that's thinking too far out. I don't necessarily think that they themselves would want to plan around that kind of concept, but I don't know. I'm not the game dev. I want to talk about ecology. So in the video, it starts off, you see some birds riding on an armadillo-like creature. So these are kind of like, I'm referring to them as Vulvodon skirts. There is a male and a female counterpart. At the very beginning, they're being chased by something that kind of looks like a gos hareng, a woolly gos hareng, bear-esque. I think World touched on an idea about predator-prey scavenger, and I think that is going to be returning element. It would be nice to see like a herd-related dynamic in this series, and with these large quantities of not necessarily NPC, but these large quantities of prey or smaller level monsters, not necessarily monsters that are hunted, but just herbivores and predators in their natural, would be kind of interesting. So there's that woolly hareng, there is those male-female. The males are the ones with the spikes. It's kind of like a wind sail, but also a conduit for electricity. I think an interesting idea would be if monsters are able to change their elemental types or weaknesses, or maybe have additional impact depending on the zone that they're in and the elements that they're affected upon by. That would be an interesting idea, not necessarily done in Monster Hunter before, but is visible in some element, especially with the glowing conduit spike on the male, which is more of a gray. And then stopping there, we have like some downy crakes. These kind of look like downy crakes or toucan versions of crakes. I know there's also phantom birds. So this is like a bone structure, and obviously these are the females. They're tan. The males are dark. In the next scene, we see what look like Kestodons, or a variant of Kestodons, with a ridged horn and kind of hooked horns framing the face, sort of similar of goats. We also have like a wyvern raptor in the back, and by that I mean like a small bird of prey, not necessarily like a wyvern or necessarily a raptor. Just a way of saying, we have a bird out here, bird of prey. Also, we have these tiny little prey, which I think are kind of acting as like the scavenger element. So you have the predator, you have the prey, you have the scavenger. So living environment, which World tried to flush out, and I think they did pretty successfully with the ecology. 1 second here. I think maybe that might be a little too loud. Hopefully I haven't ruined this video. Continuing, so we have this herd of scavengers moving along the bottom, and they kind of have a flowered gilled neck frock and like a little spiny point back. I don't know if there is more than one variation there. I do like, even though it's limited, what we're seeing here. Some of these rocks that they're running through, the rider and the mount, not quite a palamute. Obviously, I'm not seeing any signs on the arms of a slinger or a clutch claw, which is nice to get away from that. I'm also not seeing any bugs. This is without HUD or UI, and this is also probably still early footage that can change. Even if the game is in development and they are happy with this result, we're probably going to see a much more polished product. There's other things too that I wanted to point out, that not necessarily the topic in the order that I had written it, but when we very first start, the hunter is obviously with a greatsword. We have a sling over the side with a bowgun. I believe that there's a side angle where we see a pickaxe, and it would be interesting if we kind of have a return to form with Monster Hunter, where we have a little bit more preparation included or involved, and maybe those would be visibly represented. Highly doubtful, since it would be interesting, maybe too much to have those assets change. But I mean, games have done similar things before, and obviously Capcom knows what they're doing in regards to this series when it comes to executing a vision. So I mean, if they think that that's a good idea, then they might follow through with that. There's also a difference in the mount's actual movement. It looked like at one point it goes from a 2-legged stance to a 4-legged stance. That's going from like a jog to a run. The mount also appears to have glider-like features, not necessarily full flight. That could change. Another thing to take into account is that our mount is very vibrant, and obviously that could be done purposefully in an art direction, where you want to be able to separate the difference between your companion, your assistant, and obviously monsters in the environment around you. This could also be done as a means to express that this mount is not actually from this biome, and maybe we will acquire different mounts from different biomes. It definitely kind of feels like a hunt and gather, no pun intended. Additionally, there's some other elements there, but I keep trying to find this side angle where it shows the pickaxe off to the side, which I thought was rather clever and kind of cool to see details represented in real time. And so we go from basically the 2-legged jog that I was talking about, with the arms tucked in the front, and to a full 4-legged sprint. So now we're sprinting. Now, whether or not that's an engagement factor, so I know that sometimes when you run away from monsters, you're actually able to increase in your speed, and that's just how the game plays out. Sometimes it's an intentional thing. I like the traversal of the rocks in this area. I think that it's an interesting change-up, as opposed to being reliant on a Slinger Spider-Man-like quality, and also the Palamute itself, which just kind of runs vertically up surfaces. Seems like you have more dynamic interaction in a vertical sense. Also, some of those rocks look like they've been pretty well weathered, and they didn't quite look like they were coral rocks of any sort, but it would be interesting to see some of those biomes make a return in some degree, at least visibly. We're running, there's lightning striking the ground. I think I want to talk about, dynamic weather. We already kind of touched on that. It would be interesting to see that some of the ground that's being stricken, maybe if it's in a more lush area or even a more fertile area with some of this dry grass, if that starts like a brush fire, that could be an interesting concept. Where are my notes? Try to rush through this. I apologize if I'm rambling. So we talked about Kestodons, we talked about the small birds. There's also other birds that fly in the air. We get Los here in the middle. It wouldn't be a launch trailer without Los. It wouldn't be a Monster Hunter game without Los. It's not a flagship without Los. We get it. Los kind of cements that you're home, and this is Monster Hunter. The gameplay concept, I think, is revolving around the hunt with mount or pet. It's not a palamute. I think it's like a palawyvern, a palaprey, whatever. It kind of has that visual appearance of the mount that Obi-Wan is riding around in the third prequel of the Star Wars series. I think the game could have more open spaces. I think that this herd quality is going to be a staple throughout the series. So I think that there's always going to be us moving from zone to zone, kind of hunting different wildlife, and there being a full ecosystem. This definitely feels like just this trailer that this game has a much more solo emphasis, which the game has always had a more multiplayer based focus. Not to say that it wouldn't be cool to have you and 3 other friends running around, jumping through the environment, but the environment does seem more expansive this time, and there is a sense of isolation where it's just you and your mount. I think that that's a dynamic that hasn't really been captured before. I think in the past it felt like there was room for more, but there also at the same time it was just enough for you, whereas in now it kind of seems like you are in fact in this bigger world. This has been represented in games, I think, in the last half decade or so, with like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, all those, just different stylings of like, here's a big open world, do something. And more often than not, those games usually end up lacking some substance. But I think with Monster Hunter, you're going to find that in the ecology, you're going to find that in the environment, you're going to find that in essentially tracking or, discovering new areas. I think I talked about the rider and the mount. The fact that you start with a greatsword, that there's that bowgun and the sling. I think it would be an interesting idea if the Capcom was pursuing a mobile camp concept. In World, you essentially would go to a base camp, you could change out your weapons, you could change out your loot, but once again, if we had a return to form, maybe you are preparing more, you are bringing items with you, that would be interesting. I would feel like you would need to be able to have more items on hand. Maybe this is just a visual aesthetic kind of thing, like to make the world feel more lived in. It's hard to say what that is, obviously. We're not there yet. We got a couple years to go. I think world environment I've already kind of touched on a little bit as far as where these different biomes are. That big open area here at the end, I feel like this is something that has been in Monster Hunter before. If somebody has seen that would be awesome. Not that I'm expecting any interaction, but pass the info along. You heard it here first. Monster Hunter themes, once again going back to, I think 4th gen does have a place, and we are kind of seeing a revitalization of the series through paying respects to previous Monster Hunters. So it would be cool to see more. And I think my only other real comment to make is about the greatsword, and I guess technically even the bowgun. They do have a very basic appearance. It is that metal form, which I think with World there was metal and bone. Hopefully Capcom was listening and they took criticism to heart, not necessarily in a negative way, and they see that people want a return not necessarily to the goofiness of Monster Hunter, but the more actualized visions of weapons with monster parts on them, or that are more expressive, and that are more staples in the series that we're accustomed to. And I think other than that, that's the gist of it. I'm of course going to go over this stuff in a upcoming podcast with Fumetto on the loading screen. He streams on YouTube, he streams on Twitch, I stream on Twitch too. I don't really care too much about it, but I guess this is my form of trying right now. As far as making content, I wanted to express and share my love of Monster Hunter. So hopefully you like my ideas. Hopefully you can see some of them as potentials. Maybe hopefully Capcom actually is pursuing some of that, and that would be kind of cool. And of course I'll be playing this game when it comes out and loving it. So I'll catch you guys later, and thank you for watching. Have a good night.